Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Good evening, everyone. So let's get started with our initial prayer. So I would like to invite everyone to close your eyes, to open your heart and your mind to the higher spheres. Let's try to reach out, to elevate our thoughts to our Master Jesus, to our God, our Father of love, in gratitude for this moment where we get together to study lessons of encouragement, lessons of light that are prepared by the higher spirits that come here to help us. Dear God, dear Master Jesus, dear friends from the spiritual realm, we are so grateful for this opportunity to bring peace to our hearts, to find enlightenment, peace, and to remind the words of our Master Jesus when he says that if you are together to study my teachings, I'll be here with you. So we thank you, dear God, for this opportunity. We ask the good spirits to stay with us during this meeting. We ask to receive, to be open to their intuitions so that each one of us can grasp the simple teachings that are helping us to move forward in our daily lives. That's going to help us to walk in the right path, in the path of good, in direction to the light. Please, Master Jesus, bless us tonight and always. So be it. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for being here with me. And I really would like to take the opportunity to be here during this 1 hour or a little bit more to talk about the study tonight. And I have to start by saying that I probably was the one who learned the most about the topic. Right, so and I hope you enjoy also. So I tried to select a few ideas, a few thoughts about Easter. So I thought I was going to study the Gospel according to Spiritism today, right? So I thought, okay, let's see, what chapter are we going to study? But then suddenly, oh, it's about Easter in the Spiritist view. I said, oh, okay, so now I have to study a little bit more. And it was a great experience for me. So I hope you also enjoy this talk, okay? So I'm just going to get here my slides ready. So tonight we are going to talk a little bit about the Easter, because we have Easter coming up, right? It's coming up on next weekend. And we are going to see what the Spiritism has to tell us about Easter. So I would also actually would like to tell everyone, if you'd like to have a question or you'd like to make a comment or need a clarification during the in the middle of the presentation, please feel free to interrupt, right? And just in the middle of the presentation, okay? But then we are going to talk about Easter. So if I could ask, when we talk about Easter, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you we talk about Easter. Anybody can share something? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Jesus crucifixion. Yeah.
Resurrection.
Yes.
Resurrection.
I think about
Yeah.
hope.
About
Hope.
hope. Yes, hope. That's right. I have an 8-year-old. He'll probably say that Eastern reminds him chocolate eggs. Maybe the first thing he could come to his mind, and for many people it is right. It is a more kind of commercial holiday, right? But today, we are going to talk about the origins of Easter a little bit to then understand the context of Easter, and then move towards what Spiritism can tell us a little bit about this holiday. Okay, so let's then look here. So first, I think the first thing that's interesting to know is that Spiritism, let me just do one thing here. Yeah, so the first thing that, we should remember about Easter is that Easter is a holiday that is actually celebrated by both Jewish and Christians, right? And the Eastern holiday, the holiday existed way before Jesus' time, so it starts to be celebrated by the Jews, and they call that Passover. Right? So it coincides with our Christian Easter. So Passover is a celebration where Jewish people celebrate the liberation of the Hebrew people from slavery in ancient Egypt. And that's when the time that they were led by Moses, they left Egypt and they moved to become a nation. They moved out of Egypt. So they celebrate this process that was a very painful process, right? So they suffered a lot, and they had in the history, they have this celebration to remember how their ancestors came up to become free. And he also remember this holiday for the Jewish people also reminds them about the moment when the angel of death passed over the doors, the houses of the Hebrews during the 10th plague of Egypt. So remember that at that time there were 10 plagues, right? And that were signs, that were warnings for the Pharaoh to free the Jews, but he didn't listen to it. In the 10th plague was the plague where it was advised. Moses went to the Pharaoh and told them that if you don't leave the people go, right, there will be the oldest son, the oldest child in each house will be in danger, right? And that's when he was advised for the Hebrew families to get the blood of a lamb and paint the doors, the top and the sides of the doors, with that blood, because then the angel of death would pass over their house, and nobody, the oldest son, would not be dying there. So that's the story about the Passover, right? And so that's what they celebrate. So they celebrate this history of their people. And the celebration of this holiday involves a ritual meal. So where they have, it's showing here in the picture in the bottom, they have it's a very detailed, with a lot of steps of celebration, that each part represents something about this part of the history, right? So they try to bring back the history of how the people suffered and become free and so on. So that's what they celebrate during the Easter time. Now, we have Easter is also a Christian celebration. Okay, so this is the celebration that Easter is when we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. And as you already pointed out, right, it reminds resurrection, it reminds crucifixion and so on. So it is this moment where Jesus spent his last few days on earth incarnated, right, in a physical body. And that celebration started on the year of 33 of our era. So way after Moses, all the Hebrews, all the Jewish people left Egypt. So that's our Easter. And Easter also celebrates the continuity of life. With the resurrection of Jesus, that's when we celebrate this continuity of life, right? So Jesus gives the testimony that life exists after death. So now, what happens in Spiritism? Well, in Spiritism, there is no celebration of Easter with the traditional view of resurrection, right? So Spiritism does not tell us to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. And that is because, and that was already pointed out by Allan Kardec in the Gospel, when he says that resurrection supposes the return to life of the body that died. So the traditional view of resurrection is that someone was going to die, the body is dead, but then this body regains life, the body that was already dead, right? And Kardec adds that which science has demonstrated to be materially impossible, right? So once the body is dead and it starts to decompose, it's impossible to regain life, right? So Kardec already pointed out that resurrection in this traditional view is not possible. And but we see in history, in the Bible, that there are some evidence that Jesus actually had a resurrection, right? So we have some examples here. So after Jesus' crucifixion and death, and so they did the burial, they put him in this kind of a cave, right? They covered the door with a big rock, right? So that the body would not be stolen. This was a concern from the authorities at the time that Jesus was crucified, because they want to make sure the body didn't disappear, so that they would not allegate that he was really the Son of God and he was raised from death, right? But the body disappeared, right? That's how what we see in the Bible. And after Jesus' death, many people saw Jesus. And the first person who see Jesus was Mary Magdalene. So 3 days, right? 3 days after crucifixion. So Jesus was crucified on a Friday, right? And he died on a Friday. And on Sunday morning, she goes to to where he is buried to try to clean. They have some procedures in their Jewish tradition, right? To clean the body and things like that. And she sees that the body disappeared. And an angel appears to her and said, "Don't be scared. Jesus raised, right? He raised." So, and then he appears in front of her, and Jesus tell her, "Go and tell the others that I didn't die, right? And I'm going to meet with you." That's what Jesus says. Next account that Jesus appeared after death was in the same day in front of 2 of his followers that were going to Emmaus, a small village near Jerusalem, and he appears to two of them, but in a different form. So the two are walking to this village, talking about everything that happened, and suddenly, Jesus appears to them, but they don't recognize that he was Jesus, and they just came reach out, just came close and say, "Oh, what are you guys talking about?" And said, "Oh, we are talking about everything that's happening this past weekend, right? And about the death of Jesus." And he said, "Oh, I didn't know about that." And then they said, "Oh, you might be the only one here around here that doesn't know what's going on." And then he spent time with them, and they don't recognize Jesus until at night when they are in a dinner, and he has a very traditional way to share the bread, right? He breaks the bread and gives it to each one of his disciples. So he did the same thing. And then that's when he could have the vision that was Jesus that they were spending the whole day. Another time where Jesus appears is in front of the disciples, the 11 disciples, right? And while they were at dinner. So they were in this house, and he just appears to them. So that's when the followers, giving all these events, the earlier followers of Jesus did believe in resurrection. They believed that Jesus had to come back to life, in his own body, which had a real bodily characteristics. They could see him, they could touch him at sometimes, and he had even a voice. So that body had a voice. So they had pure conviction that resurrection had occurred. But Spiritism has another explanation for that. And that's what we're going to see next. So for Spiritism, Jesus showed, for Spiritism, we understand that Jesus showed himself with his perispiritual body. So what is perispirit? Perispirit is this semi-material substance that serves as a wrapping for our spirit, for our soul. And the perispirit is the link between our soul and our physical body. Usually our perispirit is made of a matter. It's physical matter, but it's much more light, much more not as heavy as our physical body. And we still don't have proper ways to identify that, right? So our eyes, for example, they are not made to see the perispirit in our current condition. And the perispirit usually assumes the same shape as our physical body. So if we want to know how our perispirit is, we just have to look at ourselves in the mirror, because our perispirit can change. So higher spirits can manipulate this material that the perispirit is made of, and they can change the form the way they want. So for example, Emmanuel one of the spirits, right, that Chico Xavier received many messages, wrote many books with him. Emmanuel had many reincarnations. So every reincarnation, his perispirit changed. But he likes to present himself as Emmanuel, which was as Publio Lentulus, right, which he was one of his incarnations in ancient Rome, when he was in the incarnation when he met Jesus. So up until now, even after multiple reincarnations, he still presents himself in that way. Okay, So that's what the perispirit is. So the spirit can, at their own will, change the form, visibility, and even the touch. So they can make the perispirit more material so that people can even touch. So for example, in the case of Jesus, as infinite, pure spirit, highest spirit we ever see on earth, we can imagine that he had no problem manipulating matter or his pure spirit, so he could change the way he wanted, right? But he, for example, when he met Thomas, one of his disciples, he was in doubt, right? He didn't believe when others told that they saw Jesus after death. And he even said, I will only believe if I can touch the scars from crucifixion, right? So then Jesus later appears in front of him and tell him, here, Thomas, come and touch my scars, right? Touch the way where the sword, right, cross his chest, right, his trunk, and he even say, well, blessed are those who believed without seeing, right? So he was able, in that case, to make his spirit so material that it would even be possible to touch. Okay, so that's the idea of perispirit. And then Allan Kardec, to not have any doubts about it, he talks about apparitions. So these events where we see the deceased, we can see the deceased, are called apparitions. And Kardec tells us that these events, which sometimes many people think as a miracle, they can actually be explained by the fluidic laws and properties of the perispirit. We could probably expand many lectures talking about fluidic laws, so that's not the point here today, but there are natural laws that explain the ability in our ability to actually materialize our perispirit and present the spirits. And there are laws that allow spirits to present themselves. So then Kardec goes further and say, it makes sense to think that Jesus appeared. What we saw from Jesus after his death is his spirit because of the way how he behaved, right? The way how the events happened, because Jesus was able to appear and disappear unexpectedly. Which if we had a physical body, that would be harder, right? He is seen by some, but not by the others. He is able to appear unrecognizable for some disciples, like the two followers that could not recognize him, so he could change the form so people would not recognize that he was Jesus. And he shows himself in closed rooms. So many times when he appeared to the disciples after Jesus' death, the disciples were fearing, right? They were in fear to be persecuted by the Romans and by the other Jews. So they kept themselves locked, right? They were trying to hide and everything. And Jesus would just appear in the middle of the room. And so these are some of the explanations that Spiritism, alternate explanation about how about Jesus' resurrection. So, since Easter is the celebration of resurrection, Spiritism does not celebrate Easter in that way, right? For the Spiritist doctrine, there's no dogmas, rituals, or miracles that are taken into account, right, as truth. And Spiritism does not institute food abstinence, which is involved in many of the rituals, right, in Easter and Passover, in terms of some types of food we eat, some that we don't. So in Good Friday, most people don't eat meat, right? People would eat fish and things like that. And in And for sure, we don't eat chocolate eggs either, right? So that's part of the things that the Spiritism is not telling people to do. And it does not have also a celebration. Spiritism doesn't have a celebration that's linked to commercial or civic holidays, right? So for Spiritism, Easter should be faced as every single day in the year, right? So as any other day of the year, Easter should be a time for reflection and study, for reaffirmation, of the commitment to the master teachings, so that each one of us can build the kingdom of peace and love exemplified by him with ourselves and around us. So the idea is that it is one more day in our lives where we have the opportunity to learn new things and to reflect in our actions and try to improve a little bit more. So it is a special day, as every other day that we wake up, right? Every day we wake up in the morning, we have this new chance to restart our lives, right? And every day, every night when we lay down to sleep, we have another opportunity to think about the day and think about what are the areas where we can improve and how much we improved compared to yesterday. So Spiritism invites us to celebrate Easter as a time where we can reflect on Jesus' teachings. And when we see, and to not say that Spiritism doesn't talk about miracles, during my study, interesting, I found a passage in Genesis where Kardec actually talked about miracles that Jesus performed. And he says that there is one greatest miracle that Jesus did, and the one that truly shows how highly evolved he was. And this is the revolution that his teachings have caused throughout the world, in spite of the limits of his field of action. Right? So it's such a profound statement, because when we look back and we see the context where Jesus lived, so he was with his disciples for about 3 years. He was living in Galilee, right, in a region that was very isolated. He didn't travel the world, right? So I think Paul of Tarsus, he traveled much more than Jesus did during his ministry, right? So Jesus was in a very localized place. He didn't went too far from that region. He only spent 3 years sharing his teachings. And up until now, 2,000 years later, we are still studying his teachings. His teachings are still alive, even though after many attacks, right, many accounts of changing his words, it's still alive, and we are still trying to figure it all out, right? We still have much to understand, lots to understand. So in that point, Kardec mentions that this is a miracle, right? Because the good news, right, the teachings shared by Jesus are still alive. So by this, we can only think that's worth studying it, right? And trying to understand their meanings. So what I brought here today are just a few thoughts about how, a few ideas for reflection for the Easter time that will just bring us some of the teachings of Jesus, right? It's not all the teachings, but just some that I selected that Easter usually brings to our mind, okay? So one of the lessons that Easter brings to us that comes from Jesus is about the immortality of the soul, right? And that's what resurrection represents, right? Resurrection is this message that, yeah, the body is dead, right? The body dies, but the spirit is immortal, right? The spirit exists before our physical body and is going to survive after the death, the physical death. And we have this message here from Emmanuel that talks about how Jesus appeared, right, in his resurrection, right, after crucifixion. So he says, like, Jesus, is not a returning ghost, right? So it's not a ghost, like, he doesn't appear like a ghost that we see in the movies. Excuse me. He is not a dead man on a burial gown, right? So it's not a zombie walking around. He appears in his plenitude, right? He's in a full active state. There is no signs of sadness. So Jesus brings here the message that death is not all pain and all sadness. He comes happy, right? He doesn't show sadness. He does not spread terror or mourning. So he does not come back. He does not come back after death to tell how much he regretted coming, how much he regretted the suffering he went through. No, he's not mourning, right? The master radiates jubilant love and cries out, "Hail!" Right? Hail is a greeting, right? It's a greeting of joy. When you see somebody that you are happy to meet or see again, it's a happy greeting, right? So that's how Jesus appears after the death. So he shows not only the immortality of the soul, but he shows a positive perspective about this life after death. And that's a key message, because that changes the way how we see, right, the end of our life and the new beginning. It changes the way how we experience this this transition between incarnated and discarnated states. So immortality of the soul. Another teaching that Jesus brings to us during Easter time is humility. So during the Last Supper that he had with the disciples before being crucified, Jesus washed the disciples' feet. So before the supper, right, which was before the supper, that was the supper that the Jews were celebrating, right, the Passover. He stand up and he go wash everyone's feet, and that brings that he does that to teach us an important lesson, which is humility. He tells to his disciples, right? He asked them, "Do you understand what I'm doing here?" And at the beginning, they found it was strange, right? Because washing people's feet was a work for the ones that are in the lower in the hierarchy, right? So we would expect that the disciples would wash Jesus' feet, but no, it's the master who is doing that. So he said, "Now that I, your Lord and teacher," so Jesus states there that he is above them, right? Because he is the teacher and they are the apprentices. I have washed your feet. You also should wash one another's feet. So he's telling us here to say, listen, in that case, he's telling us that we should help one another regardless of our position, regardless of our economical position, our social position. If we might be in a position of superiority today and another in a different position later. That doesn't matter. We should help each other. And that's by helping each other that you are doing good, that you'll be following my teachings. So he's teaching their humility. And that's a lesson that we can take in our days when we could find, right? We could try to use every opportunity where we can help others to help, right? And that's a big lesson, right? Imagine if every one of us, right, in the whole world was able to make small acts of kindness and help others, how much our world would be improving so fast. So humility is another lesson. Another lesson that comes in the Eastern time is about the 3 revelations. So remember, Easter time happens is the same time that we celebrate Passover, which is related to Moses, right? So the first revelation is the revelation that came from Moses about the 10 commandments, right? And the body of laws, divine and earthly laws that were created to help guide the Hebrews into a society that was seeking for knowledge and moral behavior. So the 10 commandments is this revelation that help humanity to progress in a good way, right? So it is a message of liberation from ignorance and affliction. So we relate with the Passover, and that's what the Passover represents, right? The liberation of the Hebrews from slavery and in the search of the one God, right? And being obedient and improving knowledge and moral behavior. So this is the first revelation. And the second revelation comes from Jesus' teachings, right? And the Passover that Jesus was celebrating before his crucifixion was a moment where Jesus gives his last messages as while incarnated around us about the victory of life over death and the sacrifice for truth and love. So during the Last Supper, Jesus tells the disciples that he is going to die because his time had arrived to die, right? So he tells them that was necessary, but he tells very clearly that he will always be with them because life would not end with the death of the physical body. So that is the second revelation that life, we are spirits, right? Life continues, and truth and love is the way for us to follow, to reach full happiness. And there is a third revelation. At the same moment during Easter, during Passover, this last Passover that Jesus was around us incarnated, he talks about a consoler. This is in John 14. He says to his disciples, right? So I'm going to die, but I will ask the Father, and he will give you another comforter to help you and be with you forever, the Spirit of truth. So he's telling us, I am leaving. I won't be here in this physical body with you, and I'll probably won't come back because he never says he'll come back, right? But he says he's going to send someone else. He's going to send this comforter that is going to tell, and later he says in the scriptures that this comforter is going to tell all the things that I could not tell you now because you are not ready. You are not prepared to take everything in. And for us Spiritists, we believe that this comforter is the spirit, is the knowledge that comes from the spirits. Right? It's not only the knowledge that comes from Kardec, but the knowledge that comes from all the people that were able to connect with the spiritual world, that all the spirits in group, right, as a team in many parts of the world came to share the idea of the spiritual world. So they came, they came to give the message that, yes, it is true. Life, it's a victory over death. Truth and love is the way to go. And this life is just one part of our existence. There's much more after this life. And this is the knowledge about the spiritual life, which could be considered our third revelation. So Easter is a key moment in history because all these three pieces are put together. And one thing that's very important for us to recognize is that none of them are canceling each other, right? Jesus came and said, I didn't come to destroy the law, but put that in practice, right? He never said that Moses' laws was wrong. No, they were true. He just said that he could summarize by one single thing. Love one another as yourself and God above everything, right? So that's the one law that could summarize everything, but it doesn't cancel the 10 commandments. And Spiritism in the same way, Spiritism does not disregard the first or the second revelation. It just gives us the tools and the understanding to understand the reasons for how life it is the way it is, right? The knowledge that comes from the spiritual life make us able to understand how we live, why we are living our lives the way we live right now, what are the reasons for the sufferings we have, what's going to happen after we died, what's happening to the loved ones we lost during our trajectory. So that gives us lots of comfort. And that's why Spiritism, the knowledge of the spiritual life, is our comforter. So Easter is a good time to think about these key lessons, right? So then what Spiritism invite us is to celebrate Easter by remembering the beautiful teachings left by Jesus. And Spiritism invites us to use this special moment in the middle of the celebrations to think carefully about all the teachings, and perhaps a teaching that one of the lessons that maybe we could work a little bit better this year, maybe establishing a few goals. It may be a moment where we can set a new restart, right? And Emmanuel gives us a small piece of advice that could be maybe a recipe how we can make this reflection about Jesus' teachings. So he says, take advantage of the time allotted to you on earth to build true happiness. So sometimes we think that happiness can only be achieved after in the spiritual world, right? Because this world where we live now incarnated is a place where we have pain, we suffer, we are here to expiate our debts, right? Our mistakes, but we can actually build happiness here, starting now, if we can focus in the right things. So take advantage of the time we have here every single minute. So it's during Easter time or every day in our days. He also says, help each other, educate yourselves, learning and serving. And so it's not a passive education, right? It's not that we are going to read books and gain knowledge, but put this learning, this what you're learning in practice, helping others. And seeking inspiration of Jesus for our daily struggles. And with that, we should pray to God to bless us all. So this is our Emmanuel's small recipe that maybe we could use this Easter time to reflect on the teachings and our goals, right, for today and every day. So I think Yeah, so I think I end my talk here, and I would like to thank you all for listening. And I would like to wish you a happy Easter, right? Because we may not celebrate Easter in the traditional way that maybe Jews and Christians, other Christians celebrate, but it is a day that can bring us lots of reflection and teaching moments. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. For me, uh, the most interesting is the fact every day should be Easter in our heart, to follow the Christ example and put in action love, education, and serving people. And thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, every day it's a new day, right? For us, it doesn't make sense for us to wait until next Easter to make a change, or next Christmas, or next New Year, right? With New Year resolutions, we can start now, right? For sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who's staying? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 The way I see this, it's we always get stuck, right, into the science, because we don't have the full knowledge and understanding about perispirit, or how you can materialize, right? A spirit materializes, or whether Jesus had a fluidic body or not. So these are questions that we stumble on, and we could get stuck in there, right? And then I really would like to know everything, right? But probably we don't know for a reason right now. But one thing we can understand and start doing something about it, right? Which are the moral teachings. Because the moral teachings they don't have expiration date, right? The moral teachings that Jesus teach in year 33 is still apply to us today. And sometimes we stumble on these areas where we still don't have full knowledge, and then we stop, we forget, right? We forget about the teachings that are the moral teachings that are really going to make a change in our life. Is learning that we have to improve ourselves, work self-enlightenment, that is going to bring happiness in this existence right now. Is that what is going to create change in our lives, right? And sometimes we change the focus. And so when I start to get like, oh, I don't understand that, then I try to deviate for more the moral teachings, because there's no question that there's lots of things there we can learn, right? And exactly. Yeah.
For me, one thing, another thing about the Christ come and die for us and live here on earth is this increase my faith in the hard moments of my life. He came here. He lived. He had the same some problems we have here. He had too, and he can understand our pain in the moments of difficulty. And when I think about that, when I feel really when I feel down, I remember Christ came here, and in some moments, uh, maybe he felt like I'm feeling on that moment, and he understands, and he knows how much help I need. He knows how to help me, and this
That's right.
increase my faith and make me stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, and he set the example, right? How we
Yes,
should deal in these moments where we have a problem, when we are suffering, right?
yes,
Because Jesus had faith, showed that you should have faith, and hanging there, right?
yeah,
And hold, because the suffering, the resurrection also represented this overcoming of suffering and pain, right? It shows that all the pain has a start and an end. So we just have to be faithful and resilient, because it has an end. You'll have an end, and after that is when we can reach happiness, right? Yeah. Okay.
Let's prepare ourselves now for the moment of the passes and the blessing of our water. Place by your side a container with clean water to be blessed and magnetized. Dear brothers and sisters, no matter where you are in this moment, what difficulties you're facing, Jesus is always ready to come to our help. Place yourself now in a comfortable position, one that facilitates concentration and receptivity. Breathe slowly and calmly. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Fill your lungs with air and release slowly. Let the energy of tranquility and peace penetrate your lungs and circulate throughout your body. Your soul, in harmony with your body, feels peaceful and at peace. Let us think now about the passage of Jesus among us. In a beautiful and clear day, the golden rays of the sun illuminating the joyful landscape, multicolored flowers, bouncing, chirping birds fill the landscape with optimism. The news of the cures brought a crowd of needy people around Jesus. Suddenly, Jesus appears, calm and serene. His white tunic is light and long all the way up to his feet. At the sunset, all those who were sick and affected by different diseases were brought to him, and Jesus, laying his hand on each one, healed them, as narrated in the Gospel of Luke. Let's mentalize now Jesus approaching us in this moment, placing his friendly hands on top of your head. Feel the presence of this Divine Master right with you, feeling like a waterfall of pure and crystalline waters start to fall from his hands, coming from his love to bathe you, falling on your head, streaming down your shoulders, bathing your whole entire being, bringing you peace, serenity, and balance, cleaning all impurities and pacifying yourself. Feel these waters bathing you, cleansing, and purifying. Breathe. Now think of Jesus as a sun right before you, his light, his warmth, embracing you, enveloping you. Feel the healing emerging, emanating from Christ towards you. He hears your prayers. Trust him. His love is infinite. He is always by your side, protecting, offering everything you need. Trust him. Feel and absorb all these magnificent healing energies coming from Jesus in this moment. His light surrounds and embraces you. Feel these energies running throughout your body. Feel yourself re-energized, strengthened, and at peace. Dear Lord Jesus, our divine friend, extend your generous hands, Lord, and transform these waters into remedies for our physical and spiritual ailments. Hold us, Jesus, in your peace. Extend your vibrations of love for the benefit of my home, dear Lord. May peace, health, tranquility reign here with my family. We give thanks to you, Jesus, and pray that you stay with us today and always. Thank you, God.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's take this opportunity that we feel light, we feel well to connect to for our final prayer. So let's keep our eyes closed and enjoy this environment of happiness and peace that surround us. Let's raise our thoughts to our God of love, our Father, that look upon us, waiting for us to evolve, to improve ourselves, that watches every step on our way. Let's elevate our thoughts and think about our Master Jesus. Our Master Jesus, not on the cross, but our living Master Jesus, full of love from his heart. And let's thank for him for his teachings of light that bring us peace, bring us patience, Bring us thought, understanding that sometimes we cannot understand from our minds, but we can feel in our hearts. We can feel in our spirit, our immortal spirit. Please help me, Master Jesus, so that we can feel your light every day, no matter if it's Easter, if it's Christmas, if it's Monday, if it's a Sunday, every day in our life. And please help us to see in our neighbor, our brother or sister that sometimes need a hand. Please help us to use every opportunity to serve and to fulfill our tasks. We ask the good spirits to also bless our homes, our family, each one of us in different parts of the world, but we are united in one thought. We are united in one emotion. Please help us to keep this environment of peace and spread this inner peace around us every day, in every place we go, in our homes, at work, school, so that we can share a little bit of our joy with others. We ask for the blessings for today and every day during this week, and that your light, Master Jesus, may follow, illuminate our path during this week. So be it.